So tell me, you went in 43, July of 43, is that what you said, 1943?
In 43, yeah.
And where did you go to initially?
Well, I went to Carlisle Barracks right out of internship. And they put I was ROTC, so I had to know about uniforms and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So they were going to give me basic medical training there. And so I was there, and Agnes came down and stayed with me for, what was it, about a month?
More than that, probably.
Well, anyway, it was basic training. And so, I thought, gee, this is 43, I'm not going to really get into anything that's going to be dangerous or anything, And so one day, we were marching there at Carlisle, that we were doing all this stuff, practicing setting up tents and what the medical thing was all about and all this stuff. So we were doing all that, doing compass problems at night, trying to find our way around and all this stuff. It was like kind of Boy Scouts. And so this day we were out, beautiful, I can remember that, just as clear as anything. It was a beautiful sunny day in Pennsylvania. The sun was up and everything was fine. And we had a march on. We were walking, I guess 3-4 miles of this thing. And we were walking along, and this Jeep pulls up behind. And I don't remember who got out, but I think it was an officer. I think it was an officer. Had a bullhorn. He said, what was it? Jordan, King, and Irwin. God, I remember that. God, I looked around, what's he doing?
There's got to be some other
And
king.
it happened to be, it was the very middle, they used to take one end to the other, but this is the very middle of the lineup. Jordan, King, and Irwin. Gonna come with me. So we climbed to the back of the Jeep and we went back to headquarters. Said, you're going to be assigned to overseas to a field hospital, and you're supposed to be at the New York Port of Embarkation by noon tomorrow.
That's from Pennsylvania.
Noon tomorrow. And this was about noon the day before. I thought, oh my God. So I called her on the phone. I said, I think I'm going to go overseas. So there wasn't a very good reception. So they said, well, the thing you got to do is we're going to go over and we'll issue your overseas stuff, So I went with them, and they had all this uniforms and anything else. And of course, the thing that I got all that in the back of the car, and I was bringing it back to the apartment.
We were renting a furnished apartment,
Yeah.
so we didn't have any furniture.
So I pulled up, and I got all this junk. I had it all wrapped up in
Keep talking, I gotta.
a duffel bag, So I brought it in, and I laid it on the front floor there. And I started going through it, the uniforms and stuff I had, and it was some overcoats and some other stuff. And then I pulled out the helmet, and when I did, I almost lost it. Oh my God!
Then I cried.
Oh, she just bawled away, And I thought, gee, God. Oh, that was awful.
But we got in the car and we went.
We loaded up our stuff, checked out of the apartment, and we drove we were seeing Carlisle Barracks in Pennsylvania. We drove to New York. And we didn't know bullshit about New York. So they did tell us that it was on the Brooklyn thing, So we finally got there, and was it Irwin, I think, was there too. He came running out of the building. I said, what are you doing? He said, well, that's where you check in. He said, now we're going up to Camp Shanks, which is up on the Hudson. So he got in his car and took off. So I went in, and they told me to give my orders and all that stuff, and he said, go to Camp Shanks. So we loaded the car up, and we went to Camp Shanks. And we drove up, and the military guard there, and all, stopped. I said, I've got orders to go overseas. And I said, what do I do here? And he looked at me, and he looked at her, and he said, you don't want to come in now. He said, because you can't leave. So he said, why don't you go and give her a place to stay? And he said, don't come in, because if you report for duty, you can't leave. So anyway, I guess I spent the night with you, didn't I?
Yeah.
Next day I went down to the thing, and I checked in. It was the 33rd Field Hospital. So
We had agreed that I would stay there.
She was going to meet me somewhere. Man, I got up there, and they said, we're going to sail to North Africa tomorrow. You cannot tell anybody anything.
No, there's no
No.
communication.
No
But
communication.
we
because
been
if you
smart.
do, why you be, I don't know what.
Well, we were smart enough so that we knew this
We knew
might
it.
happen. And so we agreed that he would go and I would stay. And then every night for a week, I would go to this gate or
It was a
whatever.
gate, yeah, off the side gate somewhere there.
And if I saw him, I knew he'd be here. If I didn't, he'd be gone. So he was gone. So we're back to Josephine.
Well, I guess the thing I vividly remember was kind of an attic room, and we got up there. You remember that? And
It wasn't much
talking
better.
about emotional,
Yeah, it was terrible.
God, it was awful. I can remember it now to this day. Giving her a kiss and talking to her, and I got, you're going overseas, for God's sake. And that's it.
Fight a war.
Go to fight a war.
And what happens when you fight a war? You get killed.
And she was distraught, and so was I.
So
I went back, and I never did see her again, and then they put me on a train.
3.5 years.
No, 2 years. 2.5. 2 years. No, 2 years and a half. They put me on a train. And all the windows, the shades pulled down, you know. So we loaded on the train. Here I am with this bird bag and this helmet. That's all this damn joke. And I got on that train, and we went to, what is it there in New York? I can't remember the island, but it's not Long Island, but it's something else. I'll think of it in a minute. Anyway, we loaded off of that, and we walked right up.
Staten Island?
Huh?
Staten Island fire?
Staten Island.
Staten.
Staten Island.
No end there.
We walked off of this train and we went right up onto the ship. It was right there at the pier. We walked right up on it and they were checking us off, getting us on. Lights, you know, around, but everything was dim, you know, and it was a real ominous thing, I tell you. I got up on the ship and they said, so we were lighting us going on. So I went down to see where I was going. I was second lieutenant, and which is an officer. So I went down to my quarterfinal. They said, okay, that's your boat there. And it was in the hold of a banana boat. And it was 5 boats up. And I looked up there and I thought, goddamn, if I ever fall out of there, I'll get killed. And so I did climb up there, and we had gas warfare stuff that was all, you know, with grease and stuff in it. Uniform we were supposed to use, have ready in case we were gassed. I didn't want the damn thing anyway, so I took it up there and I put the gas warfare stuff up on the top of that bar. And I came down and I thought, what in the name of God am I going to do? And so about that time I ran into somebody and said, the colonel's looking for you. I said, oh, really? So he's up at so-and-so deck. You go see him. I want to see him. I said, okay, King. He says, you're the junior officer. We're going to make you to do the sick call.
That means
Okay,
every day.
I'll be glad to do it. I'm second lieutenant. I'm first lieutenant.
Yes, sir.
He said, yes, sir. I said, what do I do? He says, you report up to the Navy, up in where the Navy Corps men are, and they'll tell you what to do. So I go up to the Navy Corps men, and I said, Colonel set me up here to take a sick call. And there was a couple of nice guys that were all in white, you know, Navy stuff. He said, God damn, he says, Doc, he says, you're lucky. What do you mean? He said, well, come on in here, Sasha. He says, this is the dispensary. And he said, you have sick call right here. And he said, show me the stuff I needed. He said, that beautiful bunk over there is yours. It's a nice bed, hospital bed. He said, that's the place you sleep. I said, really? Really?
Not up there 5 stories over the banana
And
boat.
so then he said, most of the time, he says, you can eat with us. But he says, depends on what's going on. I said, you don't have to eat that stuff out there, the Army. I said, you can eat with us. And I was getting steak. So
The Army was noted for their very poor food.
they
And
only eat 2 meals a day. That's all they could cook with all these people on. So I was in the dispensary, and I probably had 15 or 20 guys that would come. Most of them were seasick or something else. And I had a beautiful place to sleep, a shower, a freshwater shower. Hell, they were all out there on the deck with these saltwater showers. I didn't say anything.
Did you go thank the colonel?
Huh?
Did you go thank the colonel?
No, I didn't thank him. I didn't say anything to him. Well, I stayed away from him because I didn't want anybody to take that away from me. So I went overseas.
He just assumed
On
that was
KA9,
just
it was cargo assault, KA, cargo assault 9, but it was a banana boat. It would belong to United Fruit, and we had a United Fruit captain. He was put in the Navy, but he was actually a Marine. And so we sailed out. Next morning, I woke up and we were out there at sea, and it was probably, I'd say, 200 ships in a convoy. If you have any idea what that looked like.
Wow.
200 ships, and we were going
And you
out,
were all headed to North Africa?
all going to North Africa.
Now what? I didn't know the war was being fought in North Africa.
Yes, there
I
was.
will tell you.
But it was a staging area as well, wasn't it?
Well, what happened over there was, you know about Kesselring and
The Desert Fox
Yeah, the Desert Fox.
and Rommel.
And Rommel, and what's his name? Patton.
Patton, yeah.
was over
They
there.
were all over there.
And Eisenhower was there too. We had a thing, and this was before I got there. And they more or less, I guess at the time I got there, they more or less won the war down there. But they had a lot of casualties, they had a lot of problems. The Kesserine Pass, they had hundreds of casualties there. And so I, where was I anyway? Oh, the convoy, the 200 or 300 ships. And so I looked out the thing, and here was the battleship Texas, right on our, right even with us, going along. And then we would turn, every so often, the whole convoy would turn and go a different direction. And then we'd zigzag.
That's
like this,
confuse
back
the
and
enemy.
forth.
Confused subs.
And so we go all the way to North Africa. And of course, some of it was rough seas, and everybody was seasick and vomiting, and God, it was awful.
How long did it take?
I guess 10 days, a week or 10 days. We were out there a long time. And so then I went to sleep one night, and I heard some shooting. I woke up, and I didn't know what it was. I found out later that the Germans had bombed part of the convoy. The other thing that was very important was right behind us was this big transport. It was like probably like Queen Mary, but it was on a smaller scale. It was a tour boat, whatever you call it now. And guess who was on that thing? George Burke.
Oh, really?
George,
George?
find out, Black. George Burke was
Yeah,
on that
I
thing.
remember that.
And so, of course, I sat there in the back and watched the thing, and back all day, nothing to do all day except just watch the thing.
This is Claire's husband,
Right.
Claire's husband
for Tina's benefit.
and Pat's father.
George was Claire's husband.
Yes. Okay.
So about mid voyage, one day, all of a sudden this thing falls behind. Of course, we had no idea what was wrong with it. And it fell way back, and a couple of destroyers came out, and they were circling it, and it went way back. You could always see it on the horizon. And of course, I found out from Pat later their steam turbine that controlled the rudder went out, so they had to repair it. And they were frantic because they knew the subs were waiting for something like that to happen, because that's what they wanted, was to pick off somebody where they were.
A dead fish.
And
There were a lot of people on
there
it.
was probably 6,000 or 7,000 troops on it.
Wow.
So it was a real thing. But anyway, they made it. We broke up in line and went through Gibraltar. And that's where we got bombed. I didn't know it. I heard some noise, but I didn't hear any more. And we were going through Gibraltar. And then we came to Oran, Algeria. And we pulled into the pier there at Oran, and we all, one ship after the other came ashore, and came up to the pier, and we'd all unload, and then they'd go back out. And it took 3 days, I think, to unload that convoy.
Wow. 3 days.
Oh, they were all kinds of people. So this is the next story I have to tell. So I'm going ashore with the thing, and they said, okay, well, you've got an area out here. And so they showed, I think, Colonel, that was our Colonel, I can't think of his name now, but he was a mess. Anyway, they took him out and showed this part of the desert where we were supposed to be. and they issued us some pyramid tents, you know. So I wasn't quite involved in it. So then the next thing happens to me is we're getting all this stuff done. He comes to me and he said, I'm going to make you motor officer. Okay, I'll be glad to be motor officer.
Yes,
And
sir.
said you have to go draw the vehicles and get them in the motor pool and all this stuff. I said, okay. So this time we got the tent set up, and it was the most miserable place I've ever seen in my life. It was desert, you know. It was like Arizona, you know. And then they had all kinds of trouble getting the kitchen set up, and it was a mess.
That's what it's supposed to be, a mess.
A mess.
You
So I'm not-
he's talking about the kitchen now. He didn't get fed. That's why he's still
that's
alive.
right.
It's a mess.
So I wasn't getting any food, so I was
Kitchens
I was in
are
bad
always
shape.
called a mess. Did you
Anyway,
know that?
we went down to Oran and drew the vehicles. They had an assembly line down there, you know, where you could get a GM. So we had about 4 or 5 GMCs. We had some ambulances, and we had some Jeeps. Now the ambulances we were interested in because they were enclosed, and you had to put a litter up there, and you could sleep in the ambulance. And boy, it was good. You didn't have to sleep on the ground or anything else. So, okay, this is where we
Just
sleep.
get a few more of those ambulances.
This is where we sleep. And so the crowning blow of all this story goes on. That is, he came to me one day and he said, we're going to load the vehicles on a cargo ship. And he said, you go with them. I said, okay. So we go down to Oran, a convoy, you know, and all these ambulances and this stuff and the Jeeps and stuff. And we get down to Oran. We go over to Mers El Kabir. I always remember that because that's where the French fleet was. And somebody tried to shoot the French fleet. I think it was the English tried to put away the French fleet. And there was a lot of
French Armada?
No,
That's way back.
the French had some battleships or something there, and the English were going to sink them because they didn't want the Germans to get them. But anyway, there was a fight there at Mers El Kabir. Not when I was there, but this was before. Well, anyway, we get up there, we load onto the ships, you know, with little small boats, take us out and winch up over, you know. We had all the vehicles in the thing. So then the question is, what happens to me? And so the captain of the ship comes down and says, what's your rank anyway? And I said, well, I'm first lieutenant, medical corps. Okay, he says, so why don't you go up and join our officers up on the 3rd deck up here? I go up there and here's, I got a damn stateroom, for God's sakes. On the 3rd deck. And I said, gee, that's great. But I now found out what were though that was up there, they got all settled down, and I thought, Jesus, I think this is great. Navy food, stateroom of my own. But he calls me up the next day and he said, you got some Jeeps? I said, yeah. He says, I wonder if you could loan me one day. I'd like to go to town and ride around it a little bit, see what's there. I said, sure. I said, but I said, we have to be kind of careful because I said, our unit is painted on there, you know, and I don't like they'll easy identify you as a hospital. Yeah, well, we got a lot of paint here on this shirt.
Wow, pipe, man.
So he says to this Navy seaman, you know, with grubby stuff, he says, go get some of that Army paint and paint those bumpers. So they paint the bumpers, and he was a major in the Navy, which is what do you call it, commander, or lieutenant commander or something. He's okay. He says, I said, fine, but be careful. I said, because you know, I don't know what to think. Okay, he says, I'm not doing anything. I just want to go ashore and ride around and enjoy the scenery and all that stuff. Every day they'd swing this Jeep off, and he would get in the Jeep and he'd go off and ride around it. I lived in my glory of the stateroom.
On the ship.
On the ship with good Navy food, steaks periodically, and everything.
Clean clothes.
And you weren't going anywhere? You're just in port?
Just in port. And over at Anchorage to Mers El Kabir. And I always remember so much because I had nothing to do, so I was out there on the deck one day, and I'm watching this little tank ladder go by, and I saw a pair of green and gold shorts. And that's University of Vermont. And I got my glasses out real quick, and I looked, and it was Snipper Snay, we call it. He was one of my classmates in medical school. riding along there with his arms up, going to that. I yelled my head off, but he couldn't hear me at all. And later on, I saw him, and he told me he was at Merz Elkin. He was in the Navy. Well, make a long story short, the next thing is we go to Italy. We form a convoy.
On that same ship.
Same ship. We go to Italy. And of course, this ship was an assault thing, and they had just come back from the landing in Sicily. And apparently it had been a real gasser. They had a lot of trouble. The paratroopers had landed in the wrong place, and the ship was it had been bombed by the American Air Force, and they had these guns. They were shooting, but they didn't have brakes on the guns, so they were shooting these 40 calibers, and they'd follow an airplane down, and they'd be shooting at the ship next to them.
Because they couldn't stop it.
They couldn't stop. They didn't have them. So they were putting in these pipes,
Right. Stop the gun. Yeah.
Anyway, they were all shook up because they were paratroopers, and they had a lot of trouble. So anyway, we went by Sicily, and we went to Naples, and we broke up in single file and went into the harbor of Naples. And this was the first convoy into Naples, and of course the Air Force had just blown the thing to smithereens. I mean, they were deck ships, they were everything, just docks laying all over the place and everything else. And so here we come into the thing, and we go single file, and we go over to Bagnoli was the place, and they had an airplane. They had airplanes there where they would bring them out of the water. They had a ramp there.
Okay.
And so they were going to unload. So we anchored out there and said, okay, we're going to unload. And so we finally get into the war. So I'm out there on the deck trying to get these vehicles out, And they said, okay, now everybody's going in this vehicle. You climb down the rope. You had a rope ladder from the thing. And it was the front cargo hold. Well, if you notice about the front of a ship, you got a negative curve up there, It comes up to the deck. I got over the edge, and I started looking down that damn negative curve. Big old heavy rope, and it was dropped down into a LST down below. See, and the people who were going to drive the vehicle were supposed to climb down the rope, and they were swimming up. And I looked at that 2 or 3 times, and I got over the edge and put my feet down, and I tried that thing, and I said, God damn, there's no way I'm going to go down that thing. I'm scared to death. I mean, he was 60 feet off the water. And I thought, what the hell am I going to do? And I sat there on the deck, and a couple more of our vehicles went off and everything else. About that time, the guy that was running the cables, going to pull them up out of the thing, swinging them over. And I said to him, I don't think I can get down that thing. I said, suppose you could stop that Jeep on the deck? Oh, sure, he says. You want to get in it? I said, sure. So the Jeep driver who was assigned the thing, and I said, come on, Charlie, let's get here. So up comes the Jeep, whoop, bump on the deck.
Drops.
We sit down in the seat, up, over the side, down into the Jeep.
That's an easy way to get down.
Here we sat.
Well, he was a doctor. He didn't have to prove himself any other way.
God. Talk about survival. Then we went ashore, and it was at Mussolini School. That's what it was. And of course, they took, first day I was there, I didn't want to go in it at all because I figured it was booby trapped and all that stuff. And so what did we do? We went up around and we found a little side street up there. We parked the ambulances. We all slept in the ambulance. Got ourselves nice and comfortable and all that. And here were the poor hospital unit. They were using slip trenches, and God, it was an awful mess.
Sleeping in the ambulance.
We were sleeping in the ambulance. And of course, we had K rations and good food, pretty good food.
K rations, good food.
Good food.
Pretty good food.
Spain.
Yeah. So anyway, the next saga on this story is that we needed gasoline for our vehicles. And so I had talked to somebody and I said, where do we get the gasoline? They said, well, the only gas dump is in Naples. And they told me where it was. So I said, okay. I said, let's go and we'll get a few cans of gasoline and see what we can find. So we take off in a Jeep going to Naples. And of course, you know, the war is there. See,
Right.
Still in Benedict. So we get onto the Via Roma. If you ever go to Naples, you'll hear the Via Roma. That's the main street in Naples. And I mean, it's the main drag. And we started up the Via Roma, and all the shops were closed. They had those big metal things they brought down. There wasn't a single soul walking on the Via Roma. And when I went back there on rest leave, several months later, you couldn't walk on the street. There's so damn many people that were shoving you, it would be hundreds of people. There was a single soul on the Via Roma. I kept telling everybody, that's not possible. That's not possible. Well, anyway, we went down the Via Roma, and all of a sudden I heard clank, 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 clank. And I looked over, and here was a British tank going along on the other side, about one street over. And what the hell is he doing anyway? And all of a sudden this head would appear with this beret on it. This is an English guy. Look around, he'd look around. And then we'd go a little further down, and he'd parallel. See, we'd be a street here. Next time we come to this street, and he's there ahead of us. We were just barely going down the street looking. And all of a sudden that turret swung around. Boom! Came around. What's going on? Boom!
He let one
I
go.
was down the cannon. It scared the living down. He thought there was a sniper or something there, but I guess half of that apartment house went down. on that little street. I said, God damn, we're in the war here. Well, anyway, make a long story short, again, we went up, got some gas, we found the gas dump, and everybody was peaceful and quiet there. No, nothing going on. So we put about 8 or 10 gas cans on our Jeep, and we started back to the Magnolia. And when you wind around the edge of the mountain there, as you're going around the thing. And we're winding around the edge of the thing, and I'm sitting there in the Jeep, kind of looking around at the scenery, beautiful Italian scenery, And I happen to look back toward Naples, and here's a column of smoke. Look at it like an atom bomb going up, going up. What the hell is that? And so I said, look. He stops, and we pulled out a little way there. We're standing there looking at that thing. What the hell is that anyway? And about that time, boom! And we woke one of the Jeep. It was the sound got there, see? That was the paratroopers that were in the post office. And they killed 500 paratroopers with one of those bombs, one of those charges that were in there. 500 of them were in that. They were supposed to have had the thing
D-bomb.
debombed, but it wasn't. Talk about it. But the thing that got me was, here we watched it. I don't know how many seconds or so, and no sound, nothing. All of a sudden, this tremendous sound. We both went out of the Jeep. We took our heads out again.
Wow.
The stuff was beginning to settle down. So that was the paratroopers in Naples. I guess after that, it was really, we didn't do much of anything. We moved up to Caserta, which was a beautiful, it was the King's Palace, had palace grounds and all that. So we moved up there, and we had our tents set out in the green, and it was nice there for about, this is in October. It was beautiful weather, and they were going across the Rapido River, and they were getting murdered up there, And of course, we hear all these stories, but we hadn't set our hospital up. 2 Corps had not been committed yet. So then, one of these days, 2 Corps got committed. And we had drawn most of our equipment, so we had gone out a little bit and practiced a little bit about setting things up, but we really weren't doing much of anything. So all of a sudden, we get the word, we're going to move to coordinates so-and-so, which is up the road. And again, beautiful fall day. We're out in convoy with nurses, and the whole damn work. We go up there. And I often wondered, because if there was a German plane around, he would have murdered us, because we were all brand new. So we get up there to where our coordinates are. Sure enough, there's where we are. So they start setting the hospital up. They're all pounding the stakes and putting up the tents and all that stuff. So my next job, since I was a motor officer, was to get the water. So we had to have a water tank and had a water for the thing. So we're setting the water tank up, and about that time, the water tank guy comes by, with his truck with full of water. And we were making arrangements for that. And we're standing there with a water truck, and I hear this. And so, goddamn, I look around. I didn't see anything at first, I think, well, I didn't take it. I didn't hesitate. Well, I wanted the damn water truck. And of course, the clearing company, which is the 34th Division, they were been there. They were the ones that got bombed out there going across the Rapido. They were all standing on the other side over there. I said, look at those jokers getting under there. I said, what? He said, that's an American plane. And so, God, it didn't sound that way to me. And so, just as it came across where we were, it was probably 500 feet up, I'd say, just about 500 feet. And it had the typical shape of a Spitfire, round wing and all that. And they said, they were all laughing. See, that's a Spitfire. Those jokers don't know that. And just as it got opposite us, the whole front of that wing erupted with shells and machine guns and everything else. Oh, everybody scrambled. So we finally got that squared away, and they were laughing at it, giving it a hard time. So I didn't anyway. So we got the water truck squared away, and then up down the road with jeeps flying and everything else come the casualties. And I mean, guys with arms off, legs off, heads off. We had never seen anything like that. Never seen anything like that. We were just thunderstruck. And it was the 100th Infantry Battalion, which is the Japanese, the Japanese that were sent over here, and they formed the 100th Infantry Battalion.
Yeah.
And they had come over with us in the convoy, and they were just as green as we were. There was a bypass up there. They were working on it, trying to fix a bridge or something, and this guy shot them. And it was probably 100 of them that were wounded, probably 30 of them, real seriously. And so they wheeled all this stuff into the damn emergency room. I was sick. I really was. I was sick. I couldn't believe it. And up to this point, it had been a gala adventure. It really was. For me, it was a gala adventure. It's just beautiful weather and beautiful things going on. And here I was winning the war. God damn, when I saw that, it just made me sick. I just was sick for a week almost out of that. I'll have to think of those 100. Well, we bandaged what we could, and they had a group of surgery. They formed that, and they did some operating, amputations, and finish them up, put bandages on. Oh, what a disease that was. That was the end of my. After that, it was bad news. Yeah, bad news. We went up. We would move about every third or fourth day, and the surgical teams then started coming in, and working, and they were all competent surgeons. They were good surgeons. They were the Massachusetts General. That's where I heard about Cordelia King, who was my sister-in-law.
Okay.
And they all came in, and they would set up. And they had a team. They had a couple of nurses, and they had a couple of corpsmen, and had all the equipment they needed. And they would set up, and they would do surgery. And they did good surgery, and things started to settle down. But that first thing, a lot of people that I talked to afterwards, the corpsmen and stuff, never got over that. I mean, they were hanging off the back of the Jeep. They'd just thrown them up on the Jeep, legs off, arms off. Of course, a lot of them were dead. They didn't know anything about triage or anything else. And I guess the only thing that would make me as sick as that again was that we got a hit in the gun pit of the artillery. And that was the same kind of thing. In the infantry, if you're a doctor, they put you in a big, deep hole with sandbags over you, and then they bring in the casualties to you, and you do what you can. In the artillery, you get hit in the gun pit. You get in that goddamn ambulance, and you go up to the gun pit. Or where you're the most exposed thing, if it's showing that your gun thing positions, there you are. You go riding along in that damn ambulance.
As the shells are coming in.
Going up there with shells coming in. Oh, that was the most frightening thing I've ever seen. Well, of course, fortunately, the hit in the gun pit, I think they came in there with 3 or 4 shells. It wasn't more than that. It wasn't anything going up there. But the scene when I got to the thing is what I was gotten there. We had, we had about 3 that were really dead, serious ones. And I had trouble with the corpsmen because they knew all these guys.
Yeah, they're hard to work on.
And I'd say, I'd look at a guy and hell, his lung was hanging out and everything else. And I'd say, there's nothing you can do for him. Oh, but that's Joe, I want to do something for him. I said, you can't do it. You got to go over here and do something. You got to bandage this guy. And what are you going to do? I said, well, I'm going to give Joe a hell of a big shot of morphine, and that's all it's going to be. And probably 15 minutes later, half an hour later, he was dead. So. But I couldn't get him to.
That's the smarties there, that's you.
They all wanted to go to the most seriously appearing wound and do something for him.
Mommy's sitting right
And
there.
of course, all you had to do is look at it and you'd say, well, the chances of him making it are damn little. So we better go and treat the guy with a leg off where you can stop the bleeding and save his life. I had made my mind up that if I went to Japan, I was not going to have a 45 pistol. Of course, I've told you my famous story to you in the artillery. We were there and they said, Doc, why don't you come up with us someday to the forward observer point? And I said, oh yeah, I'd like to do that. And they said, well, they used to go up at night. And,
Sneak up and find a hiding place.
Yeah, they had a place up there, but you had to go up at night when there was no lights. So I got up there, and sure enough, they had a trench dug there with about 3 or 4 guys. And we had these big scopes, with God, they were that long, and they're big lenses on them, and all that stuff. And they were watching the valley down below. And so I was looking at the valley and all this stuff. You had to stay all day. You couldn't leave because they didn't want to give away the position. So you went up there, you had to stay all day. You had to
So
go
was the
back at
valley
night.
occupied? Was it like a
Huh?
village?
Yeah.
Oh, it was probably
In the town?
100 yards from the nearest German. I mean, it was right
It
there
was
on the
wartime.
So anyway,
A real war.
the day went along and it got kind of slow. So the lieutenant came down. He said, Doc, you want to do some shooting? I said, what do you mean? He said, well, let's do some shooting. So I said, okay. He
What else
said,
am I doing?
why don't you pick a target out over there? And he said, we'll shoot at it. I said, okay. So I looked out through the lenses and we had a farmhouse or a barn. Or it was a barn. I think it was a farmhouse over there sitting in the middle of the field. I can still see it now. It was so clear. And he said, okay, you want to hit that barn? I said, sure. So he said, okay. He had his maps there and he said, okay. He had it on the phone. They had a mobile thing. They called, ring up the battery. He said, okay, we need a phosphorus shell. And he said, let's try coordinate so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so. This is going to happen. And then, okay. And I said, okay. He said, now we'll see. And then it came back on the thing. On the way. See? On the way.
What was on the way?
All of a sudden, boom, it hits out in the field. See? It's a white phosphorus shell. And it's probably 75 yards from the house. There he is. He said, you got one in front. Now he says, Doc, you got to get one over the house. So he says, now I would suggest this. Of course, I had any idea what it was. Okay. Ring. Got the battery. I said, coordinates, big shot. Coordinates so-and-so, so-and-so. Charge so-and-so, bang.
On the way.
On the way. And so I'm sitting there, comes over, and hits behind the house. And then the guy says, you got him. You got it coordinated. You just split the difference. And then he said to me, you split the difference. And he said, there was a rumor. He said, we thought we've seen some Germans in that house, going in and out. So he said, we don't want to fire another round at that house to see if we can hit it. He said, we're going to fire the battery. So he's ring on the phone. Italian fire, so-and-so, coordinates so-and-so, so-and-so, so-and-so. I'm calling it in, And this is on the way. God damn. Stop. And that damn farmhouse completely disappeared. there was some Germans in that, and I've killed them. I've killed them. I thought, God damn, why did I get into this? I don't want to kill anybody.
Send me back to the hospital, huh?
So I told him, I said, he said, "Want to find out?" I said, "No way, I don't kill anybody." He said, "Well, there may not have been anybody in there." He said, "We just thought there was somebody in there." But I'm telling you, that damn farmhouse just went gone. Oh, that's between Italy and Germany. That's the Brenner Pass.
The Brenner Pass.
Brenner. That's the
Okay.
major road between Italy and Germany.
The road.
The road.
And how long after the war?
The war was over in, what was it, June? This is probably maybe 2 weeks, 3 weeks,
Okay.
something like that.
Trento.
Trento, beautiful place. I mean, gorgeous white mountains, glaciers, this is the Alps.
Did you go over there what we did with the band?
Well, yeah, the band went over there, but
Yeah.
we never got into Italy. I don't think we went. The Oak Ridge High School band landed in Austria and went down across the Alps and down the Rhine River and back up through Paris. So we never got into Italy, northern Italy.
Well,
That's the only time I've been overseas.
in fact, that one time we went skiing there, in the Marmolade, which is, I've seen it mentioned in the Olympic skiing thing. We climbed that thing and skied down it.
So anyway, you were saying you were going to the parties, the German parties.
Yeah, going to the German party. And so we all sat around a long table, and they had German beer, of course, and they had food, they had good steaks and everything else. And so it was a scream because we were all, and then they sang a few German songs, and then we sang a few American songs, and then we got to talking to each other, and it was amazing because they had German in school, and and many of the other officers had German in college. We couldn't cut the mustard anywhere. But boy, when we got that Italian going, we all went down there 2 years. There was no problem. I mean,
Everybody
Just do your hands, right?
That's right. We were Italian to the thing. It was so
Everybody
funny.
was
They were
Italian.
laughing and we were laughing. But the story I like to tell is that we started talking about, well, when we were in Naples, where were you? And they were in Caserta, which is about 15 miles away. When we were in Caserta, where were you? They were in Cassino, 15 miles away. We were never more than 15 or 20 miles apart for 2 years. 2 years.
Did you ever directly fight them?
No, when they were quartermaster and we were
You were medical.
Yeah.
Medical.
We were
And
support.
quartermaster was a support
Yeah,
supply.
they were support troops and we were support troops. But they kept moving just right back, and they were never more 15 miles apart. And then they got to talking about some of the women. Oh, yeah, did you know her? Oh, so and so. Oh, yeah, we knew her. God Almighty.
You had some nurses that dated German soldiers.
Oh no, not that I know. They may have.
Oh,
I
I
don't know.
thought you did.
No. But they did. I got a kick out of that because there were some Italian people, women that they knew that we knew. Let's put it that way. And it was kind of interesting. It was a lot of fun.
And there were 30,000 of them in this town?
30,000 Germans.
What were they doing? Were they going back home or what?
They were going home. Yeah, they were waiting to be transported back home. In fact, some of them were left while we were there on trains. They were going back.
Okay.
They disarmed them. And they surrendered. We disarmed a lot of them were support troops. They weren't combat troops. And we had a few SS that we had to handle. And I've told you my famous story of the SS Colonel McLaren.
No, I haven't heard
Did
it.
you tell that?
No.
Well, we were on the road there in northern Italy, and I remember this was just right after the war was over. And some of those SS troops didn't want to surrender. They were
They were
fighting
the elite
They were
until
elite.
the death.
to the death.
And they
so
were trained.
they were trained and they were vicious.
They weren't
And so the
from home.
word came over the radio to me, and I was of course the ambulance. They called me because they wanted somebody to camp. That we had a house that was filled with about 30 SS troops, and they were fighting. They were shooting. And so, boy, we were artillery outfits. You know, they had done no infantry at all. They didn't know anything about it. They said, God, let's go get them damn Germans. You know, this is the artillery outfit. So they were going down the road, and about that time,
They ought to go 20 miles away and lob some shells on them. Is what they ought to do.
Colonel McBride got wind of what was happening. Boy, he showed up, and he said, what the hell do you think you're doing? He said, well, we're going to go in there and we're going to get those Germans. And he turned around and he said, you don't know nothing about infantry tactics. He said, what do you know? He said, artillery. Bring up that 155 howitzer.
There you go. That's what you know.
And it came, they brought it up and they turned it around. And I thought, yeah, how's he going to, I mean, this is probably, I'd say 300 yards down there, this house. I said, how's he going to shoot that? I mean, this is a houser that we shoot, 3 or 4 miles down.
Right.
And I'm curious. I said, Colonel Wright, how are you going to shoot that thing?
Make sure it doesn't get over 90 degrees.
He says, we just looked down the barrel.
Oh.
We just looked down the barrel. I said, what do you mean? He said, we'll put it up there. And he said, we looked down the barrel. We see that house in the barrel, shell it. And I'm telling you, 155 howitzer shell is a hell of a big shell. Boom! It went, whoa! Germans were coming out of there with their hands.
One shell?
One shell.
And all the artillery guys were high-fiving each other.
Yeah, they were heroes, but it was so funny because they were so stupid. They were going to take their rifles and
They're new Lugers. They're new Lugers that they
They were
bought.
going to go in there and get the Germans. But GIs are funny guys. They really are.
Thank goodness the
McBride came out
Thank
there.
goodness, because that's how we can win the army,
Yeah.
the wars.
McBride was one of the greatest men that I know of. I just loved him because.
Was it general or what was it?
No, he was a colonel.
Colonel?
Yeah. He came up, he was a teacher at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, the artillery school.
Mm-hmm.
And during almost the end of the war, they sent him overseas. And they gave him the command of this artillery battalion, which I was with. And of course, he came in and he was straight army, boy. And I always got a kick out. He'd say, okay, Captain King, we're going up and inspect battery so-and-so tomorrow morning. Well, I was right at the ready. And I knew I had the book out, and I knew what I was supposed to do. I was supposed to check the
This inspection book.
Inspect it. I was supposed to check the latrines. I was supposed to check their immunizations. I was supposed to do this and this. So line them all up.
Kitchen.
Oh, the kitchen. Yeah, had everything. So he would go over and talk to them about their artillery pieces and what they were doing and all that. I would go talk to them about the medical thing. Then we get back together again, and this is the time that we had I always tell this story because it was so funny. We got a battery that came from Panama. They were down there, with big guns. They were defending the Panama Canal, which they never did anything. They were down there the whole war. And so finally they said, you could send those damn guys overseas because
Get some action.
they get some action. And of course they came over and they joined this 248 Field Artillery, which is an old time. They've been over there 3 years and 2 years.
Well seasoned.
Yeah. So I'm in sick call. Here come all these guys. What's your problem? Got a headache. Can't wear a helmet. And we had a core rule that you had to wear your damn helmets. And so
Makes sense.
If you can't wear a helmet,
Yeah.
you can't be in the
Doc,
war.
Doc, I just put that helmet on and my head just aches and aches and aches. I just can't wear
Try loosening it up.
it. I talk about it. And so I must have had 15 on sea call that day. So I gave him some aspirin and I talked to him. I said, you've got to wear those helmets. I said, you can't do that. Well, I can't do it. I said, you've got to wear it. Well, anyway, this is to make a long story short. Next day, I should say, a day or two before, I'd been with Colonel McBride, and we had moved it. They had long toms. There were 155 rifles, big guns. You've heard of long toms.
Mm-hmm.
And the English had been there, and they were always stupid about artillery pieces. They didn't give a damn. They were lazy. They didn't want to get the thing. So they had set one gun behind the other on a roll. See, they had dug a little gun position here, and they brought the other one around, up the road a little further and put the stuff. And I was with McBride that day. He came in and he was having a fit. He said, you can't do that. You got to move that gun. Oh, that's just, this is mud, you know, and it's all, so we can't.
It's hard to move.
Yeah, hard. Well, we can't fix that. We can't do that. He says, you move it by tomorrow. He said, by tomorrow afternoon. He said, I want that gun moved. Well, that night we had a firing problem. And what happened was we had what we call VT fuses. It's a variable time thing. They were fuses that would go on the shell that would go over, and when it proximity fuse, when it got near the ground, the fuse would go off. You get an air burst, which was an awful mess as far as So here they are, one behind the other. This guy fires.
Hey, Drew.
Wondered where you were.
This guy fires the thing, and he gets up here, and there's a raindrop or something. It sets the VT fuse off, and so the damn thing goes off right over the second gun. Fortunately, it was over the second gun, but the damn shell, a 5.5 big shell, and it went off right over the goddamn gun. Oh shit, they were scared to death. It came down. Bride says, I don't care. He said, you're going to move that damn guns. And boy, they did.
They were moving, man.
The next day, I didn't have anybody on sick call. They all had their helmets on.
Oh, the helmets.
Oh,
No, I had them on, but they had them pulled down.
No, what's that?
Oh,
sit right here.
GIs are great. They're